Welcome back. This story takes place on Vanta Junction, a working transit station sitting alone in a busy shipping lane, where crews come and go and most people learn not to ask questions. Our main character is Cade Rhyss, a maintenance technician who keeps the station's systems alive when they start to fail. He is not security, not command, and not the kind of person anyone expects to matter. But on a station like this, the smallest problems can hide the most dangerous truths. In a place built on procedures, quiet corridors, and sealed doors, Cade hears something that does not fit. And once he notices it, he cannot unhear it. One choice turns into another, and the station starts to feel less like a workplace and more like a trap. If you enjoy science fiction with survival pressure, hard choices, and ordinary people forced to stand between truth and silence, you are in the right place. Settle in, keep your attention sharp, and listen closely. Because on Vanta Junction, the first warning is rarely the alarm you can see. Cade Rhyss worked the cold line because the station trusted him to keep people breathing. Vanta Junction hung in a shipping lane where freighters stopped for repairs and crews swapped out without looking each other in the eye. Cade was a maintenance technician on paper, but he was the one they called when a door froze shut or a life support pump coughed. Right now, he was in the cryo-storage annex, trying to stop a bank of sleepers from drifting into permanent silence. The pressure was simple and immediate. An old cryopod was screaming a distress pattern, and someone had tried to make sure no one heard it. The cryo-storage annex smelled like coolant and old plastic. Frost clung to the seams of the pods like pale varnish, and the overhead lights buzzed with the fatigue of constant use. Cade moved along the row with his tool, sat at his hip. His gloved fingers traced the panel edges until he found the pod that felt wrong. It was not the loud alarm that caught him. It was the rhythm beneath it, a pulsing beat that did not match station safety code. 3 short bursts, 1 long, then 3 short again. It was a call that had been shouted across void for generations, trimmed down to fit in the cracks between jammers. A distress call. He crouched and pressed his ear near the casing. The pod vibrated faintly, like it was trying to speak through ice. "The hell are you doing?" someone asked from the doorway. Cade did not turn. "Keeping a system from lying," he said. The voice belonged to Rook Halden, a shift supervisor who liked rules because rules kept him from needing judgment. Rook stayed in the threshold where warmer air still lived. "That pod is sealed," Rook said. "Its status is restricted." Cade tapped the panel, and the screen flickered, then steadied into a clean lie. It claimed stable temperature, stable oxygen, stable everything. But the casing was too cold, and the vibration told the truth. Cade kept his eyes on the pod. "It is not stable," Cade said. Rook raised his hand as if he could push the issue back into its box. "Look, we have procedures, and if it is restricted, we wait for security." Cade stood, average height and average build, and he did not look like trouble. That was the point, because the station liked trouble that wore a uniform, and Cade wore grease. "This is not a security problem," Cade said. "This is a breathing problem." He opened a small side cabinet and took out the only thing the annex kept that was older than the pods. It was a metal key, heavy and plain, tethered to the cabinet by a steel cable. When he lifted it, frost bloomed over his glove as if the key itself carried winter. Rook frowned. "That is for manual overrides, and we do not use that." "Then you can stand there and watch a restricted pod die quietly," Cade said. Rook hesitated, and Cade saw the station inside him. Fear of consequences always looked like caution when you needed it to look brave. Cade slid the key into a narrow slot beneath the panel. The lock resisted like a stubborn jaw, then gave with a snap, and the pod shuddered. The console displayed a line that read, "Manual release engaged." The lie on the screen wavered, and for one breath, the numbers blipped into something closer to real. The oxygen was falling. Cade took a breath and put his hand on the seam. "If you want to call security, do it now, because they will arrive to a corpse," he told Rook. Rook swallowed. "You are going to get us both fired." Cade looked at the pod again. "I have been fired before, and it was not the part that hurt," he said. The casing warmed under his palm as the system obeyed the key. Locks disengaged, and pressure equalized with a thin, sharp hiss. The lid rose a few inches, then stopped. Something inside had jammed it. Cade leaned his weight into it, careful and steady. The seal broke with a sound like ice cracking on a river, and cold air spilled out in a thick breath. Inside, a human face lay under a thin film of frost, eyelashes rimmed white. A woman, older than a young recruit and younger than the station's tire veterans, lay still under the haze. A strip of fabric at her throat held a name tag, the letters slightly warped from time. It read Doctor Selene Arkansas. Cade had never heard the name, which meant she was not anyone Vanta Junction wanted remembered. He reached in and brushed frost from the sensor patch on her temple. The patch flickered, and her chest rose, shallow but present. Cade kept his hand steady, like steadiness could be shared. Rook took a step forward, then stopped as if crossing a line might brand him. "That is a doctor," Rook said, like saying it made the situation worse. "It makes the situation expensive," Cade replied. The pod chimed again, and the distress beat underneath it sharpened. Selene's eyes opened. They were clear, and they were not surprised. Her lips moved with effort. "Close it," she whispered, her voice thin as paper. Cade froze. "What?" Selene tried to swallow and failed, then forced the words out anyway. "They watch the seal, and when you open it, they come." Rook backed away. "Who comes?" Selene's gaze flicked past Cade to the doorway, to the corridor beyond, as if she could see footsteps through metal. "The people who put me here, and the people who need me to stay quiet," she said. Cade pulled the lid down halfway, not sealing it, just hiding the open seam. He leaned close so she could see his mouth. "Can you breathe?" Cade asked. She nodded once, slow. "Not for long." The pod's internal status light blinked an unhealthy amber. Cade did not need the screen to know the coolant loop was failing. Someone had cut the maintenance schedule, or worse, someone had made sure it would fail in a way that looked natural. Cade felt anger, but he kept it quiet. Rook's wrist unit beeped. He glanced down and flinched like the message burned. "Security is on its way," Rook said. They flagged the manual release. "Not security," Selene rasped. "Not station security." Cade's posture tightened, because he had heard that tone before. It was the tone of someone realizing the uniform in front of them was not there to help. A dull thump echoed in the corridor outside. Then another, closer, and it was not footsteps. Doors locking. Cade moved to the annex panel near the entrance and tried the control. It refused him. The console displayed a line that read, "Access denied." Rook's face went pale. "I do not have access either." Selene let out a breath that turned to fog. "They're sealing the annex, and they will isolate it, then say it was a systems failure," she said. Cade looked at the key in his hand, frost crawling up the metal. It felt heavier now, not in mass, but in consequence. "Why was your pod restricted?" he asked. Selene's eyes sharpened. "Because I refused to sign, and because I recorded what they did," she said. Cade did not ask who they were, because he did not have time for long answers. He asked the only question that mattered. "Can you walk?" Cade asked. Selene stared at him like he had offered a miracle. "With help." Cade looked at Rook. "Open the emergency hatch to the service crawl," he said. Rook blinked. "That hatch is sealed from the other side." Cade held up the key. "Not if it is old enough." Rook hesitated, and Cade saw him calculating his future against the woman's breath. Cade did not soften his voice. "Do it," Cade said. Rook moved, hands shaking, and pulled off the plastic cover to reveal a small mechanical lock on the hatch. Cade slid the key in and turned. The lock clicked, and the hatch resisted, then finally opened. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of dust and old wire. "They will have to come through the annex door, so we go through this hatch and down the service ladder," Cade said. He bent over the pod and slid his arms under Selene's shoulders. Her skin felt cold through her thin sleep garment, and she gripped his sleeve with surprising strength. "If you take me, they will come for you too," Selene whispered. "They are already coming," Cade said. Rook's wrist unit beeped again, and his eyes darted. "They are not using the public channel, and this is a closed-tag, Kestrel unit," he said. Cade knew the name, not as station staff, but as contracted enforcement. Selene's lips tightened. "That is them," Selene said. A hard knock hit the annex door, not a polite request. Metal flexed. A voice spoke through the door speaker, calm and close. Maintenance technician Cade, RHYSS, open the annex and do not escalate. Cade almost smiled, not from humor, but recognition. They always said that line when escalation was already their plan. Rook whispered, "How do they know your name?" Cade did not answer. He guided Selene toward the hatch, and the key cable dragged behind him with a soft click. The knock came again, louder, and the door frame groaned. Cade's focus narrowed to seconds. "Move," Cade told Rook. Rook climbed first, hands and knees into the crawl. Cade pushed Selene after him, and she winced, but she went. Cade followed and pulled the hatch down behind them. It did not seal perfectly, but he did not need it to. As the hatch shut, the annex door finally gave with a shriek. Cade heard boots hit the floor, heavy and purposeful. The crawl space was narrow, with wires along the ceiling like veins. Cade crawled with one hand on the key cable and the other guiding Selene's ankle so she did not snag. Behind them, a flashlight beam swept across the hatch seam. Selene whispered, "They will hunt the sound." Cade felt the key click again as it hit the cable ring. He wrapped his glove around it to muffle the noise. "Then we do not let it ring," Cade said. They dropped through a floor hatch at the crawl's end, then turned right into the lower gallery. It was darker here, lit by emergency strips that painted everything in thin red lines. The air was warmer, and that warmth made Selene shiver harder as sensation returned. Cade kept moving because stillness was a target. Rook dropped down and nearly fell, and Cade caught her by the collar. "You are shaking," Cade said. Rook's mouth worked. "I did not sign up for this." "No one signs up for the part. Where you find out who you are," Cade replied. Selene leaned against the wall, breathing in short pulls. Her eyes stayed on the access hatch above them. Cade listened and heard boots, the scrape of metal, and someone talking low into a microphone. It was not station radio, and it sounded too sure. "They are fanning out," Cade said. "We go deeper." Rook pointed down the corridor. "Deeper means the machine shops, and those are locked at this hour." "Locked is a kind of safety," Cade said, and started moving. They took a service corridor down 2 short flights, then cut left into the station's underbelly. Pipes ran in clusters and fans rumbled like distant storms. Cade moved with confidence that came from years of crawling through the station's bones. Every junction had a smell, and every corner had a sound. Selene stumbled once. Cade caught her arm without looking. "You should have left me," Selene said, her voice strained. Cade kept walking. "You do not get to decide that," he said. Rook looked back. "They will lock down the entire ring." "They already started," Selene said. "They will use station fear to cover it, and they will say there was contamination or a fire." Cade's jaw tightened as memory surfaced, sharp and unwanted. He remembered a different corridor, years ago, when a supervisor used the word contamination to justify sealing a door with people behind it. He did not speak of it, because he did not need to. It lived in a way he moved now, forward, refusing to stall. They kept pushing through the maintenance run until the emergency strips began to stutter. A little later, the strips flickered and the station lights dimmed. They stabilized at a lower level, as if the station had decided to whisper. The wall terminal blinked. The console displayed a line that read, "Sector access restricted." Rook swore under his breath. "They are cutting sections." Cade glanced at the terminal and saw the signature style. The restriction was not station security code, but a contract override. Selene watched his face. "You see it," she said. "It is not station law," Cade replied. "It is corporate law," Selene said. "And corporate law has teeth." They took the next left at a junction and followed the maintenance run to a hatch marked for machine shop access. Cade tried the panel, and it refused him. He reached for the key. Rook's eyes widened. "That key opens everything. It opens what old engineers feared more than thieves," Cade said. He slid the key in, turned, and felt the lock yield. Frost spread along the hatch edge where the key touched, and the hatch released. They slipped inside. The machine shop was a cathedral of tools. Lathes and welders sat silent, but their shapes filled the dark like sleeping animals. The air smelled of oil and metal dust. Cade guided them toward the back, where a service corridor led toward the station's emergency communications array. Selene's breathing hitched, and she pressed a hand to her ribs. Cade stopped and looked at her. "How long were you asleep?" Cade asked. Selene blinked slowly. "Long enough for them to build a story, and long enough for my name to be erased." "That does not answer my question," Cade said. Selene swallowed. "More than a year." Rook stared. "A year." Selene's gaze hardened. They needed time to make the death look natural. Cade felt heat under his skin that had nothing to do with the shop. "Who are they?" he asked. Selene opened her mouth, then closed it, and chose the safest answer. "The people who profit, and the people who obey." From somewhere in the shop, a door clanged. A flashlight beam sliced across a lathe. Kestrel had found their path. Cade took Selene's arm. "We do not wait," he said. They reached a junction where the service corridor split. One route led toward the public docks, where shuttles came and went, and the other led down into the deeper machinery spine. Rook pointed toward the docks. "If we can get to a shuttle, we can leave." Selene shook her head, weak but sure. "They control the docks, and they will be waiting with scanners." Cade listened again, and behind them came footsteps. Ahead, a low hum like a live wire rose from deeper systems. He pictured the docks crowded and watched, and he pictured the core relay, dangerous and unwelcoming. He chose the place where he could control the variables. "We go to the relay," Cade said. Rook exhaled like he had been punched. "That is a restricted zone." "Today, everything is restricted," Cade replied. They took the deeper corridor down the machinery spine, then stopped at a heavy relay access door. The air warmed as the sounds changed. The quiet creaks of a sleeping station gave way to the continuous roar of systems that never stopped. The floor vibrated under Cade's boots. He felt the station like a living machine under stress. Above them, a public announcement began, smooth and calm, too calm. "Attention, all personnel, a safety protocol has been activated, and please remain in your assigned sectors." Cade snorted once. "Assigned sectors," he muttered. "Do they assign oxygen too?" Rook glanced at him, half shocked and half grateful for the crack of humor. Cade's face did not change, because it was only a release valve. The corridor ended at a heavy door, and a panel beside it blinked red. Cade tried it. Denied. He held up the key again and turned the lock. Frost crawled over his glove as the door unsealed with a sigh. The console displayed a line that read, "Internal quarantine initiated." Rook stared. "Quarantine? That is insane." Selene's eyes closed for a moment. "That is their cover story, and they are turning the station into a cage," she whispered. Cade stepped through the relay access chamber door and pulled Selene after him. Heat hit his face, and the relay's presence pressed in like a storm. Behind them, a voice echoed down the corridor. "Stop where you are." Cade did not turn. He pulled Selene forward, and the key clicked faintly under his grip. They crossed deeper into the access chamber, and the door began to close behind them. Cade heard boots sprinting and a hand slam against the narrowing gap. Then the door sealed, and the sound cut off, leaving only the roar of the relay's heartbeat. For one breath, silence sat between Cade and Selene. Selene looked up at him, eyes bright with the edge of fear. "If we get trapped in here, they will not need to shoot, and they will just wait." Cade stared at the sealed door, then at the deeper passage ahead. "Then we do not get trapped," he said. They kept moving through hot relay corridors, taking turns by memory until the air started to taste like metal. They did not stop, even when the heat made Cade's collar stick. An hour later, Cade could tell the station had changed by what he heard and what he could not open. The light stayed low and doors that should have been open blinked red. Down here, in the relay access levels, the noise never let him pretend things were normal. Systems rumbled, fans screamed, and sweat beaded under Cade's collar. Rook lagged behind, eyes wide and breathing fast. Selene leaned on Cade more, not because she wanted to, but because her body had not moved in too long. Cade adjusted his pace without saying it. They came to a maintenance alcove, and Cade paused long enough to listen. Through the sealed door behind them, muted by thick metal, came the faint sound of controlled voices. Kestrel unit had not lost them. They were simply changing the rules. The wall panel blinked. The console displayed a line that read, "Identity verification in progress." Rook swallowed. "They are running station-wide checks. They want to force us into a dead end," Cade said. Selene nodded. "They will make every corridor a question, and every wrong answer will be a cage." Cade scanned the maintenance map burned into his memory. The relay levels connected to the emergency broadcast spine, and they also connected to the coolant purge routes. "We take the coolant route," Cade said. Rook's face twisted. "That route is a hazard, and it is not meant for people. It is meant for emergencies," Cade replied. He looked at Selene. "Can you handle cold again?" Selene's lips pressed into a thin line. "I can handle worse than cold." Cade almost asked what she meant. Then he heard a new sound behind the sealed door. Metal cutting. "They're bringing tools," Cade said. Rook's eyes darted. "We have minutes." Cade pulled open a low hatch and climbed down into the coolant purge route ladder well. Cold air blasted out like a slap, and frost glittered on interior rails. Cade led Selene in first, then followed, pulling the hatch shut behind them. The route was tight, a ladder and narrow platforms running alongside thick coolant pipes. The pipes hummed with liquid that could freeze flesh in seconds. Cade moved carefully, one hand always free to catch Selene if she slipped. Rook muttered, "I hate this place." "It does not care," Cade replied. They descended, and the cold bit through gloves and cloth. Cade kept his breathing slow, because panic stole oxygen faster than leaks. A loudspeaker crackled to life, but not in the station's usual tone. This was a private channel patched into public speakers, and the voice was calm and too close. "Doctor Selene Ark, you are in danger," the voice said. "Stop moving, and we will provide medical assistance." Selene stiffened, and Cade felt it through her arm. Rook whispered, "How can they speak here?" Selene whispered back, "They own more than doors." Cade's eyes narrowed, because the voice on the speaker was not Kestrel. It was someone who could rent Kestrel like a tool. The voice continued, smooth as oil. "Cade Rhyss, this does not need to end badly, and you are not the target. You are a worker, so do not die for someone else's mistakes," the voice added. Cade almost laughed, but it came out as one short breath. "Someone else's mistakes," he repeated quietly, then kept moving. The coolant route spilled into a lower service bay through a rungied ladder and a side hatch. It was empty, but not untouched. Cade saw fresh scuff marks on the floor, the kind left by crates dragged into place. Rook stepped forward and froze. "Those crates were not here," Rook said. Selene's gaze sharpened. "They are funneling us." Cade crouched and felt the air. He heard a faint whine, a high pitch that meant an active scanner. They wanted a clean capture, not a messy one. They would use locks, stun fields, and fear. Cade lifted the key and held it close to his palm. Frost spread as he used the key to pop open a floor panel. A conduit ran below, thick as a wrist. Cade looked up at Rook. "Give me your wrist unit," Cade said. Rook stared. "Why?" "Because it is broadcasting you like a beacon," Cade replied. Rook hesitated, then handed it over. Cade snapped it open and yanked the power cell, and the unit died in his hand. Selene watched him with tired, wary respect. "You know how they track." "I know how people cheat," Cade said. He guided them around the crates, staying low and using machinery as cover. The scanner whine rose, then faded as they moved into its blind spot. They slipped into a narrow corridor that rose one short stair and fed into the emergency communication spine access. Behind them, a heavy thud echoed. Kestrel boots close. The corridor ended at a door with an emergency medical symbol painted on it. It was a small infirmary closet, a place for quick triage, and the door was open. Inside, a light glowed warm. A med kit sat on the counter, neatly placed. Rook exhaled. "We can help her here," Rook said. Selene's fingers tightened on Cade's sleeve. "No." Cade looked at the scene and felt his stomach go cold. The med kit was too neat, and the open door was too generous. "This is bait," Cade said. Rook's mouth fell open. "They would use medical supplies as bait. They will use anything that makes you stop," Selene said. Cade stepped past the infirmary without slowing. Rook followed, shaken and quiet. Behind them, the infirmary door hissed shut on its own, sealing like a jaw. Rook shuddered. "If we had gone in..." They would have locked you in, Cade said. Then they would have told the station you died in quarantine. Selene swallowed hard. They do not want bodies, and they want silence. They reached a ventilation crossing, and Selene's breathing turned ragged. Cade stopped and guided her to sit against the wall. Rook looked around, panicking. We cannot stop. Cade ignored him and opened a med pouch he carried for his own job. It was not much, but it was honest. A stimulant patch, a heat strip, and a water packet. Cade pressed the heat strip into Selene's palms and offered water. Selene drank in small sips. You should leave. Cade kept his eyes on the corridor ahead. You keep saying that, and you keep being wrong. Selene's gaze flicked to the key. That key is why you got in, and it is why you can move, and they will take it from you. Cade's grip tightened, and the key clicked faintly. He froze, listening for boots, and heard none yet. He wrapped the key in a strip of cloth from his pouch. We do not let it ring, he said, more to himself than anyone. Rook whispered, they're sealing more sectors. The wall terminal blinked. The console displayed a line that read, Dock access suspended. Cade nodded once. Then we go to the spine. They climbed a short stair and passed through a wide maintenance door into the emergency communication spine. The spine chamber was a tall shaft lined with antennas, relay coils, and amplifier racks. Heat rose in waves, and the hum of power made Cade's teeth vibrate. At the base of the shaft was a narrow platform with a control console and armored windows. Cade guided Selene to the console. Can you send the call? He asked. Selene stared at the controls, hands trembling, eyes sharp. Yes, if they did not cut the last link. She reached for the console, then hesitated. They will see it. Send it anyway, Cade said. Selene's fingers moved over the panel. The console displayed a line that read, Emergency broadcast channel active. A thin static crackled, then a tone. Selene took a breath. This is Doctor Selene Ark, she said into the microphone. This is a distress call, and Vanta Junction has been hijacked under a false quarantine. We are being hunted, and we request immediate assistance on Terran response frequency, she added. Rook flinched at the implication, as if calling Terran responders summoned a storm. Cade did not flinch, because he had heard the stories. Static surged. Then the channel went dead. Selene's face tightened. They cut it. Cade slammed his fist lightly against the console, controlled. They cannot cut everything. Selene turned to him, tired eyes carrying resolve. They can cut enough, and that is why I am here. That is why I was frozen, she added. Cade held her gaze. Tell me the simple truth, and tell me why they are this afraid of you. Selene swallowed. Because I refused to certify a lie. They sealed a habitat corridor during an evacuation, she continued. They told the public it was contamination, and it was not. It was profit, Selene said. Cade's jaw clenched, because every station had a version of that story. People died behind sealed doors, and paperwork called it safety. Rook whispered, if you have proof, why not release it? Selene's gaze flicked toward the shaft above, where antennas hummed. Because they control channels, and they can bury data. But they cannot bury a rescue fleet showing up because someone heard a distress call, Selene said. Boots clanged on the stairs below the chamber. Kestrel had arrived. Cade stepped in front of Selene and drew a breath. He did not have a weapon worth mentioning, but he had tools and the station itself. He leaned toward Rook. Do you know how to lock the stairwell gate? He asked. Rook shook his head. Cade did not waste time on anger. Then learn fast, Cade said. The stairwell gate was a heavy mesh barrier that could be dropped in emergencies. Cade moved to the manual lever and yanked it, and the gate fell with a metallic crash. Kestrel boots hit the platform below. A voice rose, filtered through a helmet speaker. Cade, RHYSS, the voice called. This is Kestrel unit, and you are obstructing an authorized retrieval. Open the gate, the voice added. Cade did not answer. He pulled Rook to the console. Find the emergency loop, Cade said. Keep the channel alive, even if it is weak. Rook stared at the panel like it was written in a foreign language. I'm a supervisor, not a technician. Cade's eyes narrowed. Then supervise your hands. Selene moved to the microphone again, her voice steadier now. This is Doctor Selene Ark, and Vanta Junction is in distress. False quarantine, she continued. We are in the emergency communication spine, and we request immediate assistance. Static hissed. Then a new voice cut through, sharp and calm. Dr. Selene Ark, the voice said. This is Director Marrow Vin, and you are harming innocent station personnel. Stand down, Vin said. Selene went pale. Then, Cade felt a cold line run down his spine. Who is that? Cade asked. Selene did not look away from the air, as if she could see him through signal. He is the one who signed the contract that bought this station's silence. Vin continued, smooth. Cade Rhyss, you are a worker, and you are being used. Open the gate, hand her over, and you will walk away, Vin said. Your record will be cleared, and your debts will be settled. Rook froze. He knows your debts. Cade watched the gate, where kestrel silhouettes waited behind mesh. The station was closing like a fist, and Vin spoke like he owned the fingers. Vin spoke again. If you do not comply, I will keep the quarantine active, and people will suffer. That will be on you, Vin said. Selene's voice trembled with anger. You sealed them. You sealed the corridor, and you called it safety, Selene said into the microphone. Vin's tone did not change. You are emotional, Doctor, and that is why you were removed from duty. Cade's fist tightened around the wrapped key. The key clicked faintly under cloth, and he made himself breathe past it. He spoke into the microphone, voice even. Director Vin, you talk like you're saving lives, and you sound practiced. Vin paused for half a breath. Who is this? Cade. Rhyss, Cade replied. Maintenance, and the person you did not account for. Vin's voice softened. Cade, you can still be smart, and do not make yourself a martyr. No one remembers martyrs on stations like this, Vin said. Cade's eyes narrowed. I'm not doing this to be remembered. I'm doing it because I remember, Cade said. He cut the microphone line and turned to Selene. Your proof, is it in your head, or is it stored somewhere? Selene swallowed. Both, but the recording is locked, and it needs the key. Cade stared at the key in his hand and understood. The key was not just a tool, and it was a gate between truth and silence. They held their position through the next long stretch of noise and heat. Cade listened to cutting and footsteps while the station tightened around them. 2 hours later, Cade could tell the upper ring was in trouble by the way the loudspeakers repeated themselves. He heard anxious voices carry down vents, and he saw corridor screens pushing the same calm lines on loop. Screens played instructions about quarantine and contamination, and Cade could hear station guards shifting in the distance. Down in the communication spine, it all felt like weather he could not touch. The real storm was closer. Kestrel's torch chewed through the mesh gate, and the hiss of melting metal filled the chamber. Cade stood with his back to the console, watching the cut widen. Selene sat on the floor near the console, knees drawn up. The heat strip in her hands had gone cold, and she breathed slowly, forcing her body to obey. Rook's fingers fumbled over the control panel. I cannot keep the channel stable, and they keep pulling it down, he muttered. Cade kept his voice steady. Keep it alive long enough for one clean transmission. Rook glanced at him. What is the plan? Cade did not answer immediately. He looked at Selene. You said you recorded the order, Cade said. Where is it locked? Selene pointed weakly toward an access panel beneath the console. There is a sealed vault in the spine, and it only opens with that key. Cade nodded once. Selene's gaze searched his face. Why are you doing this? Selene asked again. Cade's jaw tightened. For a moment, he saw a different door in a different corridor. I was there once, Cade said. Voice low. Another station, another corridor, and I told myself I could not change it. When they sealed it, I did not break it, Cade continued. I lived with that, and I am not living with it twice. Selene's eyes softened, then hardened into focus. Then we need to move because they will breach. A sharp crack echoed as the mesh gate finally gave way. A section fell inward, and Kestrel agents stepped through. Their weapons were capture tools, stun emitters, restraint foam canisters. Clean and quiet, corporate. The lead agent raised a hand. Cade Rhyss, step away from the doctor, and she is property under contract retrieval. The word hit Cade like a slap. Selene whispered, do not let them take me alive, because they will erase me. Cade's mind moved fast. The coolant purge line ran under the platform, accessible through a maintenance grate. If he vented it, sudden cold would fog the chamber and confuse sensors for a moment. Not enough to hurt if controlled, but enough to buy time. He moved toward the grate. The lead agent pointed. "Stop," the lead agent said. Cade stopped, hands visible. "You're in a communications spine, so do you really want to fire stun emitters around signal amplifiers?" Cade asked. The agent hesitated, and corporate crews hated collateral. Cade used the breath of hesitation. He dropped to one knee and yanked the grate open. Cold vapor burst up, white and thick. The chamber filled with fog. Selene coughed once and pulled her sleeve over her mouth. Rook yelped, and Cade moved through the fog and grabbed Selene's arm. He pulled her toward the console vault panel. Kestrel shouted, muffled by helmets, and boots stomped, searching. Cade jammed the key into the vault panel and turned. The panel snapped open. Inside was a sealed storage unit, insulated and stubborn. A single data capsule sat within, old-fashioned and physical. Selene stared at it. "That is it." Cade grabbed the capsule and shoved it into Selene's hand. "Then speak it." Station fans surged, trying to clear the contamination that was not real. The fog thinned and Kestrel shapes sharpened again. Cade pulled Selene behind the console and pointed to the microphone. "You talk and I block." Selene stared at him. "They will shoot you." "They are not supposed to," Cade said. "And corporate hates paperwork." Selene's lips twitched once. Then she leaned into the microphone. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. "This is Doctor Selene Ark," Selene said. "I'm transmitting an emergency record stored in the spine vault. It is a confession of a false quarantine and a sealed evacuation corridor," Selene added. Rook's eyes widened. "Do not say too much," he whispered. Selene ignored him. She slid the capsule into a reader slot beneath the console. The console displayed a line that read Vault Record Loaded. Kestrel moved closer, cautious now. The lead agent spoke, voice hard. "Stop the transmission," the lead agent said. Cade stepped forward and raised his hands. "If you touch that console, you'll trigger a public emergency broadcast across the station," Cade lied. The agent hesitated again. The lie was plausible enough to buy seconds. Selene pressed the transmit control. The microphone crackled, and a recorded voice began, clipped and unmistakably human. "This is Director Marrow Venn," the recording said. "Seal Corridor 9. We cannot afford the delay. Market contamination. Close the file. And no exceptions." The recording continued. It was short because it did not need to be long. It was a knife, not a lecture. Rook gasped, one hand over his mouth. Kestrel froze for a fraction of a second, because the job changed from retrieval to damage control. Selene spoke over the recording, voice fierce. "He sealed families behind a door and called it safety. I refused to certify it, and I was removed and frozen," Selene continued. "They're doing it again now." The lead agent snapped to action. "Take her." Two agents lunged. Cade grabbed a loose cable line and yanked it, dropping a hanging metal panel between Selene and the agents. It slammed down with a clang and blocked their reach. Cade shoved Selene toward a maintenance ladder that climbed up the spine shaft. "Up," Cade said. "Go." Selene's eyes flashed. "You come too." Cade glanced at the agents regrouping. "I will, and I would rather not decorate the floor." Selene climbed, slow but determined. Rook followed, terrified but moving. Cade climbed last, one hand on the ladder and the other clutching the wrapped key. The key cable dragged, and the metal clicked once, loud in the chamber. Kestrel heard it, and they looked up. The chase turned vertical. They climbed onto a narrow catwalk, then turned left along the rail toward an access hatch. Antenna. Racks hummed inches away, and Cade felt static on his skin. Below, Kestrel climbed after them. Their boots rang on metal, each step a drumbeat. Selene reached an access hatch at the catwalk's far end and fumbled at the lock. Cade shouted, "The key?" Selene turned, eyes wide. Cade tossed the key up, and cloth wrap unraveled slightly as it spun. For one breath, the key glittered with frost like a warning. Selene caught it, slammed it into the lock, and turned. The hatch popped open. They pushed through the hatch and turned left into a narrow corridor above the spine where the feed ran in hardwired lines. Rook panted. "Where are we?" Cade closed the hatch behind them and listened. "We are where the station speaks." Selene leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "If we push the confession into the station's public feed, they cannot bury it. They can still cut screens," Cade said. "Not all," Selene replied. "Not if the feed is hardwired." Cade scanned the corridor and saw an emergency broadcast control door. He tried the panel. Denied. He lifted the key and turned the lock, frost crawling along metal. The door opened. Inside, the room was small and filled with old consoles and thick cables. A backup transmitter sat like museum equipment, and it was exactly what corporations hated. It did not obey remote commands. It obeyed switches. Selene moved to the main console. Rook hovered behind her, hands wringing. Cade stayed by the door and watched the corridor behind. He listened for the rhythm of boots. Selene loaded the capsule again, this time into the hardwired feed. The console displayed a line that read, "Public broadcast, override armed." Rook whispered, "If you broadcast that, the station will riot?" Selene looked at him. "The station is already dying quietly, and this is just noise." Cade heard a clang at the hatch behind them. Kestrel had reached the corridor. He looked at Selene. "Send." Selene pressed the switch. Screens across Vanta Junction flickered, and public feeds went black for a few seconds. Then the recording played, raw and unfiltered, Director Vin ordering a sealed corridor and calling it contamination. In the room, the confession echoed through speakers, and Cade felt something shift. The station had been asleep, and now it would wake angry. A new voice cut into the channel, not Vin and not station staff. It crackled distant but strong. "Vanta Junction distress transmission received," the voice said. "This is Terran Response Fleet on distress frequency. Hold position, repeat, hold position, and assistance is inbound," the voice added. Selene froze, tears in her eyes, not from softness, but from the sudden weight of being believed. Rook stared, mouth open. They answered, Rook whispered. Cade's chest tightened, because relief was dangerous. Relief made you sloppy. Kestrel slammed into the corridor door outside the broadcast control room. Cade grabbed a heavy chair and shoved it under the door handle. It would not stop them long. Selene met his eyes. "We cannot stay here," Selene said. Cade nodded. "We move to the relay core, and the fleet needs a clean beacon." Selene blinked. "The relay core is sealed under quarantine." Cade held up the key. "Then quarantine is a story, and keys are facts." They ran. Cade pulled them through a side hatch and down a maintenance run that bypassed the public stairwells. The corridor outside the control room filled with noise, shouts, boots, and now station security sirens. Chaos was a shield, but it could cut anyone. Cade led them on, because crowds meant witnesses, and witnesses meant leverage. Selene stumbled, and Cade caught her. "Keep your feet." "I am trying," Selene said through clenched teeth. Rook lagged, wheezing. Cade glanced back. "If you fall behind, do not scream, because they listen," Cade said. Rook looked offended, then realized Cade was not joking. He pushed harder. They reached a junction where the maintenance run opened onto a wide service corridor. Ahead was the relay core access door, marked with hazard warnings. Behind them, Kestrel emerged, moving faster now, no longer pretending this was calm retrieval. Now it was a race to silence. One agent raised a stun emitter. Cade shoved Selene and Rook behind a pillar and stepped into the open to draw the aim. He spread his hands, showing no weapon, only the wrapped key. "Do not fire, because you will fry the relay," Cade called. The agent hesitated, again, and corporate fear of collateral was Cade's only advantage. Cade used that moment. He spun, grabbed Selene's arm, and ran to the relay core door. He jammed the key in and turned, and the lock clicked as frost flashed. The door unsealed. They slipped into the relay core chamber as the corridor behind erupted into shouts, and the crackle of restraint foam. Not blood, not gore, just bodies hitting floors and a lie collapsing in a loud truth. The relay core chamber was wide and bright, lit by the glow of power coils. The air hummed with energy, and at its center stood the main beacon console. Selene stumbled to it and found the microphone by feel. Cade turned and sealed the door behind them. Selene looked up at him, breath ragged. If they breach, you cannot stop them. Cade stared at the door. I do not need to stop them forever, only long enough. They stayed on their feet until Cade felt his own sense of time slip under the steady hum. A little later, time began to feel strange. In the relay core chamber, the hum never changed, and outside, the station turned itself inside out. Selene steadied herself at the beacon console. The console displayed a line that read Relay Core Ready. Cade walked the perimeter and scanned for manual locks and emergency vents. He found an underfloor access panel that led into grounding and cable runs. If he vented a controlled burst of static, it could disrupt stun emitters for seconds. It was not a long plan, only a short one. Rook leaned against the wall, eyes wild. We cannot fight them. We are not fighting, Cade said. We are holding. Selene looked at Cade, and her voice softened. You keep saying we hold, but you are the one doing the holding. Cade glanced at her, hard but not cruel. You did not survive a year in ice to give up at the finish. Selene swallowed. I did not survive, and I was kept. And there is a difference. Cade nodded once. He understood. A new voice crackled through the relay console speaker. The Terran fleet again, stronger now. Vanta Junction. We have your beacon, so provide corridor vector and threat assessment. Selene leaned into the microphone. Terran Response Fleet. This is Doctor Selene Ark, and the threat is a contracted enforcement unit called Kestrel. Station is under false quarantine, and we are at Relay Core, Selene said. Cade listened for the fleet's reply, but another signal cut in, sharp and cold. Director Marrow Ven. Dr. Ark, Ven said tight now, no longer smooth. You have caused widespread panic, and you have endangered lives. I will offer one final option, Ven added. Cade's jaw tightened. Here it comes. Ven continued. Cade RHSS, open the relay core door and hand her over. You will leave with a full pardon and compensation, Ven said. Refuse, and I will trigger a station-wide hardlock. Elevators will stop and life support sectors will drop to minimum, Ven said. People will suffer, so choose. Selene's eyes widened. He cannot do that, she said, but doubt threaded her voice. Cade looked at the relay console. The console displayed a line that read, External Override Request Pending. He felt the station's vulnerability like a bruise. Ven had a lever deep enough to hurt everyone. Cade spoke into the microphone, flat and clear. Director Ven, you are threatening the entire station to cover your own order. Ven replied, I am protecting the station from your irresponsibility. Cade's gaze flicked to Selene. Do you have anything else? Anything that makes him hesitate? Selene swallowed. The capsule was the core, but there's one more thing. What? Cade asked. The key, Selene said, is not only a door key. It logs every lock it opens, and it leaves a physical trace in the old vault system, Selene continued. It shows the path we took and the doors they tried to bury. Cade looked at the key in his hand, and the station became a ledger. Not digital, not erasable, but physical memory. He nodded once. Then Ven has a weakness, because he cannot afford the station to keep memory. Cade popped the underfloor panel with his tools and slid into the cable trench. He found a thick grounding line and checked its coupling points. He spoke up without looking back. Selene, keep the fleet talking and make them commit on open channel. Selene nodded and leaned into the microphone. Terran Response Fleet. Confirm you have recorded Director Ven's confession and the current threat? The fleet voice answered, firm and loud enough for anyone monitoring to hear. Confirmed. We have recorded the confession, and we are recording all active channels. Maintain beacon, the fleet added. Cade smiled once thin because that was the point. Ven could bury data, but he could not bury a rescue fleet's recorded channel without picking a fight that would ruin him. Ven hissed through the speaker. This is interference in a private contract. Selene replied, steady. You made it public when you sealed people and called it contamination. Cade gripped the grounding line and listened for movement outside the relay core door. Kestrel was coming again because they always came again. Cade spoke into his own microphone line, routed through the relay console. Director Vin, you can trigger your hard lock. But every door you lock will be recorded in the old vault trace, Cade said. And the fleet is recording you while you do it. Vin paused, and the silence was the first real crack in his power. Then his voice returned, colder. You do not understand leverage, Vin said. If the station burns, you burn with it. Cade answered, if the station burns, you burn first because your voice is on the match. Rook stared at Cade like he had never seen him before. You are blackmailing him? Cade did not look at Rook. I am reminding him that consequences exist. A loud impact hit the relay core door, and the door shuttered. Cade rose from the trench and left the panel loose for access. He moved to the door controls and watched lock indicators. The console displayed a line that read, forced entry attempt detected. Cade took a breath. He did not have a gun, but he did not need one. He leaned toward Selene. When they breach, do not stop talking and keep the channel live. Selene nodded, jaw clenched. Cade glanced at Rook. When the door opens, get behind the console and stay low, Cade said. Rook swallowed hard. And you? Cade's eyes stayed on the door. I'm the expensive delay. The door finally gave and opened inward under force. Kestrel poured through, helmets gleaming under relay glow. The lead agent raised the stun emitter. Cade stepped forward into the open, hands up, key visible. The lead agent spoke, clipped. End of line, Cade, RHYSS. Cade replied, that is what everyone says before they lose control. The agent aimed. Cade slammed his tool into the underfloor panel lever. A controlled surge of static vented through the floor grid, and relay lights flickered as stun emitters whined. Kestrel hesitated as equipment glitched. Cade moved fast and grabbed the lead agent's wrist, redirecting the emitter. He kicked the agent's leg out and let him fall hard, stunned more by surprise than pain. Another agent lunged. Cade sidestepped and used momentum to slam the agent into the doorframe, controlled and clean. Selene spoke. Into the microphone, loud and clear. Terran Response Fleet. Kestrel unit has breached the relay core. Cade RHYSS is defending the beacon, and this is live, Selene added. The fleet voice came back immediately. Vanta Junction. We are entering your perimeter, so hold beacon. Cade heard it and felt a timeline lock into place. He had to hold minutes, not hours. Kestrel recovered and one switched to restraint foam, aiming at Cade's legs. Cade saw the canister rise and dove sideways. Foam splattered the floor where he had stood. Cade rolled and came up near the console. He slammed the key into the old vault trace port beneath it. The console displayed a line that read, Vault Trace Active. The port lit, recording forced lock attempts, override requests, and manual breaches. It was a silent witness, old and stubborn. Vin's voice burst through the speaker. Urgent now. Stop that trace. Stop it now. Cade spoke without looking up. Too late. Kestrel hesitated again, hearing Vin's panic. Cade used that hesitation and shoved a heavy equipment cart into their path. He was not winning a fight. He was buying time in small coins. Selene kept talking. Director Vin is attempting remote control of station systems, and we request detainment authority upon arrival. Vin shouted. You have no authority? Selene replied. You have no conscience, and kept her voice steady. Rook stayed low as ordered, shaking with his hands over his head. Cade's world narrowed to breath and sound. Boots, static, and the key's faint click under his glove. Through the relay chamber window, a bright flare crossed the dark curve of the station. Then another, then a cluster moving with purpose. The Terran Response Fleet had arrived. The relay speaker crackled with a new tone, controlled urgency. Vanta Junction, this is Terran Response Fleet boarding team, and we're docking now. Stand by for security sweep, the voice added. Kestrel stiffened because they were contract fighters, not war fighters. They did not want to face a fleet that answered distress calls as doctrine. The lead agent on the floor looked up at Cade, calculation replacing obedience for one breath. This is bigger than you. It was always bigger than me, Cade said. That is why you should have left. Kestrel backed toward the door, retreating without running. Vin's voice cut in, thin with anger. Kestrel, complete retrieval, Vin said. The lead agent hesitated, and Cade saw the shift. Kestrel feared the fleet more than they feared Vin. Cade leaned into his microphone line, low but reachable by helmet receivers. Your boss is about to become a liability, so choose who you want to be tied to. Kestrel retreated fully and slipped out of the relay core chamber. The door remained open, a threat that had stepped back but not vanished. Selene exhaled, shaking, and kept her voice on the channel. Terran Response Fleet, we have activated an old vault trace, and it records forced entries and overrides. The fleet replied, copy, maintain position, and do not engage further. Cade looked at Selene. We do not chase, we hold. Selene nodded, eyes bright, staying upright because that was the only way she knew to survive. Outside the chamber, footsteps multiplied, then heavier steps, disciplined. A Terran boarding team entered the corridor, visible through the open door. They wore clean-lined armor and carried restraint gear designed for living targets. Their leader stepped into the relay chamber and raised a calming hand. Doctor Selene Ark? Selene nodded. Yes. The leader looked at Cade. Cade RHYSS. Cade nodded once. The leader glanced at the vault trace port glowing under the console. We have the confession recording and station broadcast logs, and we have a live record of Director Vin's threats. Cade felt a tightness release slightly, not joy, just shape. The world had shifted toward consequences. The leader continued. We are detaining Kestrel Unit under emergency authority, and we are issuing a hold on Director Marrow Vin's contract privileges. He will be brought in, the leader said. Selene closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked at Cade. You did it, Selene whispered. Cade shook his head once. You did, and you spoke. Rook stood up slowly from behind the console, trembling. Am I going to be arrested? Cade looked at him and kept his voice soft. If they arrest you for being scared, they will need a bigger station. Rook let out a shaky laugh that turned into a sob, and he covered his face. Cade looked away because he did action better than comfort. Later, when the boarding team had secured the relay core and station security reopened sectors, Cade finally had a moment to breathe. The relay chamber still hummed, and the station still lived. But the lie that wrapped around it was fraying. Selene sat on a bench in the relay chamber wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her hand still shook slightly, but her eyes were steady. The Terran leader, Captain Irina Voss, stood nearby, speaking into her microphone in short, clear phrases. Cade caught fragments like sector reopened, quarantine false, and contract override suspended. Cade watched the door, because habits were hard to break. Selene spoke quietly. You never asked what happened in the corridor, Selene said. Cade glanced at her. I do not need details, and I need outcomes. Selene nodded. The outcome was bodies behind a door, and a signature that called it safety. Cade's jaw clenched, and he looked at the key in his hand. The frost had melted now, and it was just metal again, heavy and plain. You said you refused to sign, Cade said. Selene nodded. They offer me comfort and money and a quiet post, and they said it would help the station move on. Cade snorted. Move on is what people say when they mean forget. Selene held his gaze. Yes, and when I did not forget, they made me disappear. Captain Voss approached, calm and sharp. She looked at Cade. You kept the beacon alive, Voss said. Cade shrugged. Minimal. I kept the key from being stolen. Voss glanced at the key. That key created an audit trail that cannot be erased remotely, and it will hold up in hearings. Cade's eyes narrowed slightly. Hearings take time. Vous dead. Time is what predators count on, and we are not giving them time. Voss turned to Selene. Dr. Ark, you are under protective custody, and we will move you to a secure medical deck. Selene took a breath. I do not want to sleep again. Voss replied, simple and firm. No one will freeze you. Not while we are here. Cade watched Selene's shoulders loosen by a fraction. It was a small sign of trust, and it mattered. A little later, Cade walked with the boarding team through a service corridor toward the holding bay near the docks. The doorways along the way were open again, and Cade could hear low voices and cautious footsteps returning to the halls. They reached the holding bay near the docks, where Kestrel members were restrained with helmets removed. Faces were exposed to witness, because witness was the opposite of silence. The lead kestrel agent sat with wrists cuffed and looked up as Cade approached. "You are not a soldier. Neither are you," Cade said. "You are a receipt." The agent's mouth tightened, and he did not deny it. Captain Voss stepped beside Cade and addressed the agent. "You are being detained under emergency authority," Voss said. "Your contractor is being investigated for false quarantine and attempted suppression of distress communications." The agent's eyes flicked. "We followed contract," Voss replied. "Contracts do not override distress law." Cade watched fear settle into the agent's face. It was not fear of pain, but fear of consequences. A station security officer approached, pale and sweating. "We located Director Vin's remote access node in the administrative suite, and he is trying to leave." Voss nodded once. "Then we stop him." Cade felt familiar cold settle in, because powerful people never accepted endings. Cade looked at Voss. "He will use hostages," Cade said. "Voyagergestories. You know him." "I know his type," Cade replied. "They do not lose alone." They took a service lift up 2 levels, then cut left into the administrative suite corridor above the public docks. The administrative suite sat above the public docks, polished with clean walls and soft lights. It was designed to make people feel safe, while signatures killed them behind glass. Cade stayed behind Voss and her team, not leading now, but watching angles. He kept the key in his pocket, and it felt like an anchor. As they approached, a public screen flickered. The console displayed a line that read, "Administrative override request denied." Someone had finally cut Vin's contract privileges. They reached the suite door, and it was open. Inside, Director Mero Vin stood in a fitted suit, hair neat and face composed. He held a small handheld device, a remote control node. Beside him, a station clerk stood frozen, eyes wide. Not a hostage by gun, a hostage by fear. Vin lifted his hands in a gesture of peace. "Captain, I am glad you are here, and this station has been compromised." Voss stepped forward. "Director Vin, you are under detention pending investigation." Vin smiled faintly. "Investigation? For what?" "For attempting to contain a dangerous situation." Selene was not here, and Cade was glad. Selene did not need to watch this man perform. Voss's voice stayed flat. "For issuing a false quarantine, for ordering a corridor seal, and for attempting to suppress a distress call." Vin's eyes flicked to Cade, recognition flashing, then annoyance. "You, the maintenance man." Cade did not respond. Vin looked back at Voss. "Captain, we can resolve this quietly," Vin said. "The doctor is unstable, and she is emotional, and she will say anything." Voss replied, "We have a recorded order, and your voice is clear." Vin's smile faded for the first time. His eyes hardened. "Voices can be faked," Vin snapped. "Voyagerstures. Step away from the clerk and surrender the remote node." Vin tightened his grip on the device. "If you take me, this station collapses under panic, and people will die." "Is that what you want?" Vin asked. Cade spoke calm. "People already died." Vin's gaze snapped to him. "And now you want to be a hero?" Cade's voice stayed flat. "No, and I want you to stop speaking." Vin pressed the remote node. Nothing happened. The screen behind him flickered. The console displayed a line that read, "Override blocked." Vin stared at it, disbelief cracking his posture. Voss stepped forward and took the device from his hand without force. "Your privileges are suspended," Voss said. "You are not in control." Vin's eyes darted to the clerk, then the door, then Cade. "You think you won." Cade met his gaze. "No, and I think you lost." Voss signaled her team, and they cuffed Vin cleanly and quick. The clerk sagged, exhaling like he had been holding breath for hours. Vin leaned toward Cade as he was escorted out. Stations forget. They always forget. Cade leaned close enough to answer softly. Not when the station finally hears itself. Later, the station lights brightened sector by sector like dawn moving through metal. False quarantine messages vanished from screens, replaced by calm instructions from real security and the Terran boarding team. People began to move again, cautious at first, then angry, then purposeful. Selene was moved to a medical deck under guard, and Cade did not follow. He walked back through a service run and entered the cryostorage annex through the same emergency hatch. He stood in the cryostorage annex again, where it began. The pod he opened sat empty now, lid closed, frost melting along its seam. Rook Halden stood beside him, face drawn. "I do not know how to go back to work after this," Rook said. Cade looked at the rows of pods. "You do not go back, and you go forward, and it is different." Rook swallowed. "They will come after us later, right? Because people like Ven have friends?" Cade narrowed his eyes and thought of the confession broadcast and the vault trace. Power adapted, but it hated light. "They will try," Cade said. "But now they have to try in the light." Rook looked at the empty pod. "You think she will be safe?" Cade hesitated because safety was a lie stations told. "She will be harder to erase, and that is the best anyone gets." Rook nodded slowly, accepting the harsh truth. Cade reached for the key cabinet. The cable still hung slack. Cade opened the cabinet and set the key inside. For a moment, he stared at it, remembering frost and consequence. Now it was just metal again. Rook asked, "Are you keeping it?" Cade shut the cabinet. "No, because keys belong where they can be found when someone needs to open a door." Rook let out a shaky breath. "You are weird." Cade let his mouth curve barely. "That is why I still have a job." Cade turned to leave the annex. As he walked into the corridor, a small station terminal flickered near the corner. The console displayed a line that read, "Unidentified distress ping detected." Cade stopped. He stared at the words for one breath, then another, listening for the rhythm beneath them. Somewhere in the station's bones, another call was trying to be heard. Cade did not look back at the cryostorage annex when he left. He walked the service corridor at an unhurried pace, listening to Vanta Junction breathe again. Fans steadied and doors unlocked in sequence, and the station sounded less like a cage. In the medical deck above, Doctor Selene Ark would wake to clean air and real witnesses. Director Mero Ven would wake to hard questions and a recording that did not fade. And Kestrel Unit would learn what every hired shadow eventually learns. When the light turns on, silence stops being a weapon. Cade paused at the corner terminal one last time. The console displayed a line that read, "Unidentified distress ping detected." No alarms, no drama, just a simple fact waiting for someone to act on it. Cade rested a hand on the wall and felt the station's faint vibration under metal. Then he nodded once, as if making a promise to himself rather than to anyone else. On stations like this, you do not save the whole world. You save one door from closing, and sometimes that is enough to change everything. If you stayed with this story to the end, thank you for giving it your time and your focus. If you want more sci-fi stories like this, with survival pressure, hard choices, and humans who refuse to be erased, help the channel grow. Please tap like if the story pulled you in. Share it with someone who loves sci-fi audiobooks. And subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next transmission when it comes through the dark.